Okay, this is week 3 for Web 233, Intro to JavaScript. This week going over functions. Okay, first of all, on the functions, as far as discussion here, let's go ahead and click on this reading here for functions. It talks about the functions being like an alert. Those are in method functions built into JavaScript. You're going to create this week your own functions. And function basically job is to take input from the program and then to show that input, whether it be a calculation that's done, whether it be a repetition, whatever it might be. So to define a function, first thing is just a regular variable where the value given that function happens to be a function. So an example here was var square equals function x returns x times x. So if we did a console log of that, square 12 will return 144. There it is. And so the console log goes to the square variable, which is a function, and returns the value 144. Also, a function has certain parameters in it. Like in this one here, the parameter was one input x. In this case, it was sent to a value of 12. And functions must also always be wrapped in braces, just like an if statement. Function can have multiple parameters besides just one, like this one here. Base and exponent. So on the console log, sending 2 for the base, exponent 2. You're going to get back 1024. So parameters and scopes. On parameters and scope, basically, it's determining on where the function can be called. Important to note that the function property of the functions is that the variables created inside of them, including parameters, are local to that function only, not outside of that function. So the localness of the functions or the variables are within the function diameter. So for instance here, x inside 12, or inside here, if we were to tap on that and to run this, notice console log x, outside is going to take precedence here. And if we do a F2, notice it's inside of this function. This first console was just this right here. It didn't grab this one because it would have called F1 to do that. So if I, for instance, F1, when it was called here, change that to a little bit different. So you'll notice precedence is always on the outside of function variable versus inside, even though both these are the same name. It's going to take the outside first. Second one shows that when calling the function itself, which that's what this one's doing, calls the function first, then it brings in the variable. Notice it does not use the var operator before the x, so it's going to use this one here was outside the function. So the outside scope here is going to take precedence. And then it goes into nested functions. Go through that reading. Functions as values, where you can just call a value like launch missiles. It'll kick back the variable for that, variable output for that. Here's an example here. So return, we still have no flying cars. So notice when we hit the console log, the future says future, and then it's going to just kick out that reply. All right. Slideshow, let's go over some of that. So one of the things this week we're talking about besides functions is also the ability to use a function, the power of a function, how it's much more powerful than just an individual variable. And it can be called in multiple places throughout the program to avoid duplication. Principle here is write the code lines once, refer to as many times you need. We've already seen this at work as far as in our examples. Built-in function math.floor, math.square root, prompt, alert. So those are built-in functions. So one of the common functions also is mathematical, as shows here. And you can also wrap up your own code writing functions like mini programs within the function itself. Functions, one of the important things to note on the front end of it is the naming of a function. Make sure it is in some making sense of what that function's job is to do. To call a function, basically just making the function code, execute, and produce the results. So again, writing the function once, calling it many times. We say the function returns a result it computes. Function call is an expression that evaluates the result, and function returns it. And a call can appear anywhere within your code. An assignment, an arithmetic operator, an alert, a condition. So in this example shows the square root function, how it returns a value of the square root of x. You got your return value, you got your arguments. And functions are usually both arguments and return values both, however they are optional. You can have a function, as we've seen in the example of the reading, with no arguments, just returning back a string or some type of output that's within the function only. So here's a function called myProgram. It has built into it variable x, x cube, and then with x cube calls another function called helper, which takes that num variable and gets the modulus of that and brings it and returns it back to x cube, and the result is x cube. So here's an example of a function call versus a function definition. This would be a function definition, the entire thing here, function helper and function program, function definition, function call, this line right here. If we wanted to call my program outside of my program, we would just have to call it this way with the name of the program or function with a semicolon. So you can think of a program structure of your program as a collection of multiple function definitions. Only call to making a function begin running. We'll add a function first as function myMain. So bookcase functions are popular as well. So myMain will be the start of a program. And notice it calls helper and it calls validate in this example. Inside of helper, it also calls isInt. So myMain in this example gets the whole snowball running downhill within the application. And parameter passing, just noting that, like in this example here, is passing the parameter x to this function here, and then returning back the result to helper. So executes become the result here. If you put in different parameters, you're going to get different results. So we looked at code showing no parameters, showing return values, and showing parameters passed in, and also showing scope rules. Now let's go on to the scope example or scope discussion. Scope of a name, part of a program where the name can be seen. And remember, we can have that globally or locally within a function. Globally be outside of your JS file all by itself. Locally inside your function. The third bullet, var declarations inside a function are local. Var declarations outside the function would be global. Functions can be declared inside a function and they are local. But now if you declare a function outside or a variable outside a function and then call it or assign it something else in a function, that's fine as well. So in a local scope, anything declared locally, the function can be seen and used inside that function only. It cannot be seen or used outside that function only. So here's an example. To global, gx and count. And this helper function brings in a num and returns back gx. Num times gx, whatever gx is in this case, is 12. These are what's called top level functions or top level declarations or global variables. You'll notice the next example here, it tries to do an alert on the Y operator or the Y. It's not visible because Y is declared in the main. Global variables need to be used sparingly. It says on this slide not to use them. I would say it's fine to use them, just use them sparingly. Examples of global variables be like tax rate, username, things like that's going to carry throughout a program. You wouldn't want to create a global variable for everything, but some variables are fitting. Global variables are fitting. That's all I want to talk on that one. Next are some examples on W3 schools of some variables. And some of the ones, there's a math variable, which is a built-in function for math, math.random. So we click on this try it link or try it button. It's actually calling the script my functions here. Within the button, the on click is calling my functions. And inside there is just doing a math.random, which is going to give us a random number like it's doing right now. So every time we click on it, it's going to give us a random number. And this one here is displaying possibilities of different ways to display things with regarding enter HTML, document write, and Windows alert. So we run this, my first program, and then it's calling demo. We're calling the script demo and putting in there the value of 5 plus 6 will be 11. Document write. Same deal. It's just instead of using the PID for paragraph ID, it's just doing a document write within the script. And here, when you hit the button, notice it actually overwrites anything in the body of the message with the actual value 5 plus 6, which is 11. So there's a few ways to use, which is showing a random function, going back either 1 or 2. Let's see the code here. So it's using a value of 1 or 2 and returning that value. And it's running from the main. So when the app runs the first time, it's going to run this random value and give it 1 or 2. When the button is clicked, it's going to call the random function, because you'll notice in the on-click event, it's calling the main every time. It calls the main every time. It's going to get the random value, either 1 or 2. We could also change this to something besides 1 or 2. We could do maybe heads or tails. Now it becomes a heads or tails game. I'll put it back to 1 or 0. The in-class lab is to complete the code in the Replit this week. So this one is to complete a JavaScript exercise on the left. When I click the run button, it's going to, and hit the submit button. And then when you're done, put done in the in-class app in week 3. There is some source file here from the Dropbox. So you're going to be creating a coin toss function to return heads or tails. And the example we just looked at earlier is going to help you. Okay, so that's the first document for the week 3. Second one goes into reading. Make sure you do your reading on that, on objects and arrays. Week 3 assignment, you're going to submit and set up a plunk from Fahrenheit to Celsius. A couple good example helps for you as far as basic exercises. This one here goes into the JavaScript conversion for Celsius. It also shows you how to do Fahrenheit as well. So your creative plunk for week 3, update the HTML to include in the HTML of week 3 plunker. Week 3 Web 233 assignment. Add a button with a text that says find out Celsius. Call the function and call name temp in the JS file. Update your JS file to have the following comments. Create a function named temp that takes the input of temperature in Fahrenheit, converts Fahrenheit to Celsius with a 2-point decimal. And this Stack Overflow will help you with a 2-point decimal, by the way. And want to also make note of an example. We go to the assignment examples, week 3. Find out Celsius. So 70 Fahrenheit is 21.11 degrees Celsius. So this one's Fahrenheit to Celsius as well, so that should help you. Week 3 discussion, why do we use functions in programming? So that concludes JavaScript for week 3. Have a great week.